The Fever go down ugly to the Golden State Valkyries, and there are so many reasons why. So yeah, I was actually going to skip this video and just move straight into what I thought about the All-Star roster, which I can probably do right afterwards. But I have to say, after taking a little while away, I took like 10 minutes away from this game, I just started really thinking like, there is so much about this game that needs to change, because I was going over some of the stats, I was going over some of the points and what was changing, and I mean, honestly, from the coaching to the players, this game needed to change completely. Now, I do understand that the Indiana Fever are a team that have faced a lot of changes, a lot of adversity. There's been so much inconsistency. There has not been able to be any time to find a rhythm, really. And just as the team was finding a rhythm with their defense, playing without Caitlin Clark, she comes back in. And, Caitlin Clark is what makes this team really fun to watch. And it was great to see the Indiana Fever succeed in those 2 games that they won. But at the same time, this is not what people are like coming into the WNBA to watch. That type of like defensive team. They aren't exactly fast and, shooting like 3-point shots that nobody's ever seen or making assists that nobody's ever seen. So I think fans were just pretty much just waiting for the time and like, trying to be as faithful as they could, waiting for Cece to come back and expecting that, when she does come back, explosions are going to happen. And that did not happen. There was a lot of new stuff being tested out. Aari McDonald was put in the starting lineup. There was a small guard starting lineup with Aari McDonald, Kelsey Mitchell, and Caitlin Clark, which to me was very odd. And I was like, okay, I guess Stephanie White is testing the lineup and seeing how Aari and Caitlin can play together. But it just wasn't really working. Taking Lexi out of that starting lineup, in my opinion, was not the best decision. Lexi has more than proved herself. She makes a big impact on the court. She is tenacious on defense. She is like, is she their best? I mean, outside of Aaliyah Boston, she might be their best rebounder. I'd have to like double check the stats on that. But from the eye test and from the memory of like all the games, she is one of their best rebounders. She picks pockets. She takes opportunities away from the defending teams. So that is number one, the problem I saw from the jump. And not to mention, I think that Natasha Howard, as good as she has been, she has regressed a little bit. She did really well. I was so excited for her in the past few games. But again, that was a system that was like developed without Caitlin Clark. And once Caitlin Clark stepped back on the court, I think the Natasha Howard, Caitlin Clark chemistry does not work. It has not worked yet. And I think Steph White pulled her for that reason. And that is one thing that I will say I admired about Steph White's game, which is probably one of the only things I admired about Steph White's game in this game in particular, because she recognized that Natasha Howard just wasn't getting it done. Her chemistry with Caitlin Clark was just not there. And so she pulled her and put Michaela Timpson in. And Michaela Timpson, she's a rookie. And when you put a rookie in, there's going to be a lot of little mistakes. And she made a lot of little mistakes. But what she did to impact the team, I think, outweighed those little mistakes. Now, those little mistakes are, I think that she kind of loses her man sometimes, and her head isn't really on a swivel when she's looking for those assists. So sometimes she was very surprised by like an assist from Aari where Aari like passed it back to her and she was really surprised. There was a pass from Sophie Cunningham that she was caught off guard with on the fouls and stuff. However, her rebounding, the way that she's able to penetrate into the paint and to block good shots and to stop, buckets from opposing teams, honestly, she can be really great. I almost wonder if it would be worth trying to start her. But then again, I think that this Indiana Fever team is a team that we have just seen experiment a lot. And speak of experimenting, the Caitlin Clark off-ball experiment. This consistent Caitlin Clark off-ball experiment. Now, I definitely understand why it needs to happen. And I think that it should be tried out in small doses because it wasn't working today and it was obvious. And when you are testing too much, the Indiana Fever have just been experimenting so much. I mean, we're almost halfway through the season. I think that this level of experimenting needs to be like kind of shaved down a bit. because it's too much experimenting. And to me, it looked like nobody knew what they were doing out there. They were shooting at a very low clip, taking a lot of shots. Their 3-point percentage was really bad. I mean, today they shot at 30% when the Valkyries shot at 37%. Their 3-point percentage alone was 22%. That is abysmal for a team with Caitlin Clark on it. And the Valkyries shot 37%. They're pretty significantly out rebounded, 47 rebounds to 36. The Valkyries' defensive pressure was intense. Like, they were not letting the Indiana Fever get anything. And, the Indiana Fever are, I think, second or third in points in the paint in the league. And the Valkyries were swarming them in the paint. Aaliyah Boston, she didn't even play for very many minutes. She only made 6 points. She did have 2 steals, 2 assists, and 6 rebounds, but she took Aaliyah Boston out because the defensive pressure was a lot for Aaliyah Boston. She put in Demiris Dantas, and in 8 minutes, Demiris Dantas scored 4 points. She did really well in this game. She was only put in for 8 minutes, though, because she had just returned from America, from overseas. So I think that Stephanie White didn't want to put her in for too long. Our main 3, like Kelsey, Aaliyah, Caitlin, they were so silent in this game. I mean, Kelsey wasn't getting any passes from Caitlin. I don't think we saw one high pick and roll play from Caitlin and Aaliyah, and this is what works for the Indiana Fever. We want to bring players in to add into that. We don't want to change the whole system. But here's what I have to say about Stephanie White. So Indiana Fever went on a 9-0 run, and I think they were down by 13 or something in that vein, and they made it a 5-point game. And then Steph White took out Caitlin Clark, she changed up the rotations, and then they just lost that run. Let's move to the players, because there were multiple times when the paint was just clogged, and there should have been some, like Howard and Michaela Simpson, and who else did I see? There's maybe one, Aaliyah Boston. They should have been kicking out to wide open, spot up shooters at the 3, and instead tried to bully their way through the paint through multiple Valkyries defenders, and it just wasn't working. And not to mention, they were not covering any of the 3-point defenders. The Valkyries, they love to shoot threes, and right before this game started, I was doing a live. I said the Indiana Fever are going to need to cover that 3-point line, because the Valkyries, they might be first in 3-point attempts in the league. They are not first at 3-pointers made. So if you just, get in their face with a good contest, they just might not make those threes. But when they were covering the Valkyries, they would have too many defenders on one player, which I saw happen in the Sparks game. And then there would be an open player always at the 3-point line. Very often it was Carla Late or Kayla Thornton, and they would take those shots. They didn't make them all the time, but they made them. What were they at the 3? They attempted 32 at the 3-point line, and they made 12. Now, the Indiana Fever made 6, but attempted 27. This is a big disparity, and when I look at stats and when I look at who loses and who wins, the 3-point percentages, that is the modern basketball, and I think that the Indiana Fever are just not playing modern basketball, and I gotta say, this is crazy that I'm saying this, but it was a lot more fun to watch the Fever last season, because, Caitlin Clark was lobbing the ball across court. They were running up in transition, and this team is not doing that. And I think they really need to adjust to a more modern type of basketball. I don't know if that is what Steph White wants to do, because they are so focused on defense. And believe me, they upped their defense significantly this season. But all they needed to do from last season was up it a little bit, because they were second in offense last season. They were ranked number 2 in offense last season. If you have that much offensive firepower, you really just need to up your defense a little bit. And I think that there has been such a big focus on making this team a defensive team. We've heard it from Steph White's mouth a lot, that I think that they're losing a lot of the offensive firepower that makes them actually fun to watch. This is one of those videos I didn't really necessarily want to do, because this was an ugly game, and there's no two ways to mince words. This is on the coaching, this is on the rotations, this is on the adjustments in game, and how any sort of run was taken away. The players not kicking out when they were supposed to, the team not defending the Valkyries at the 3-point line, And honestly, the Valkyries, like, they locked the Indiana Fever up this game. Natalie Nakase absolutely outcoached Steph White 1,000%. Moving forward, they need to minimize the off ball to, yes, I get why Caitlin Clark does need to be able to play off ball, but to go from 1 to 100 in this like instance is not the way to go. And there's too much other experimenting. Caitlin Clark has not played with this lineup. This is finally like the full roster lineup we're seeing. I don't even know how many games we've actually seen the full roster lineup. It hasn't been many, if any, and in season, that is. And I just believe the experimentation needs to be less because there is no cohesion on this team right now. And honestly, we really do not know which Indiana Fever team we are going to get on the court. I'm predicting that there's going to be like two or so games just to get acclimated back, because again, it's crazy that we're saying this, but like that I'm saying this, but the Indiana Fever have not found an identity, and we are way too far into the season for that to be the case.